Why I think it's time for reformation or reorganization of the world or a new world and not a new world order. You see, when the earth was created, people lived on it all over the planet, but there was no order. There's no world order. There's no politics. Politics and all the other things like communism and they're just ways to control people and control money and to gain power over others and to feel superior. And there is a good and a bad in the system where you've got the good is the I was thinking about road rules. You know, it's nice to have road rules. So people don't just might you see those videos of India, it's amazing. But anyway, I got to thinking about we live in a time where Janet keeps going on my wall every time I post pictures of kittens on Facebook. Janet is a fanatic for cats and dogs and SPCA and the like. And she's always going on about desexing animals. And I'm 100% against desexing animals. We now live in a society where you have this animal that's a wild animal. Its natural environment is not in our home. It's not in our house. Its natural environment is out in the wild as a scavenger. A cat is a scavenger. It's not a domestic pet. But, you know, it comforts us and we like to have a domestic pet around, so we have cats. And sometimes they have you just end up with a bunch of cats. I had a huge fight years ago on the Genuine Tuggerah page with, I think it was about 16,000 people. Huge fight over desexing cats and dogs. And I went up against everybody. I think the vets, everybody. And I just said, how can you take away, you can go home and you can have sex, you can sexual pleasure, right? You enjoy sexual pleasure. But you're going to take the right away from another animal to have sexual pleasure. Now, all the logic and common sense is on my side. Okay, none is on theirs. Theirs is we've got to desex them because they're a big cat explosion, da 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 da. It's a society we've created for them. We can create areas where we can take cats and we can put them there. People say if you take your cat or dog out into the bush and leave it there, you're cruel and evil. But my take on that is that that's where they're supposed to be. So if they're out in the bush and they were part of the keeping the rodents and the like down, like rats, dogs that eat rats. And if there were too many cats that eat cats, there was a natural process of it, and we've destroyed it. So in order to fix up the mess we've made, we buy poisons to put out for rats, poisons to put out for cats, which is chemicals, which is bad for the environment. And accidentally we poison our own animals and we poison children and the like, and it goes into our water system. Humans are very frustrating. They can't see out of the square because a square was put there in their heads, and they can't see out of that. Or they create one, like pedophiles do. They have sex with children, and they think it's fine. If you stand there and talk to the pedophile and say, well, actually, it's not. They're a child, and they don't get it. If you try to talk to some early educators, I don't believe in early education. Not on the slightest. It's just wrong. Children's minds were meant to flow, and education constricts them, forms them to a way of thinking, tells them this is how to think, this is what to think, this is what to do, and then they stick to that, and that's not right at all. But trying to explain it to people is impossible. Trying to explain to people that left and right in politics is wrong, or that left and right, the left is more to one side, the right is more to the other side. They don't agree on basically anything. In Parliament, they get little children. They get huge amount of wages for messing up the country every time. Good example is Telecom New Zealand and New Zealand Rail. When Telecom was here in New Zealand, the government owned it, and it was a total failure. They sold it away at a huge loss to a American company. Within 2 years, it was making billions of dollars worth of money, profit. And that was simply because the government couldn't manage the company. Now, if the government couldn't manage the company, they're not going to be able to manage the country financially. And none of them can. We just get deeper and deeper in debt every year. So politics is an utter complete failure. Now, the church system we live in today, it is a complete utter failure. You have churches all around the world, billions, and the Catholic Church has 1 billion people, I reckon. So all the others, add them together, it's billions of people in churches, going regularly on Sundays, paying their tithes, keeping the churches running, and there is poor everywhere. They all forget you can't get into the kingdom unless you're innocent as a child, and they all forget the sheep and the goats sermon from Jesus. He's trying to tell them you've got to get out there and do stuff. And instead, they vainly look on mirrors and say, look at me, I'm a wonderful person, I go to church. And if you change a person in here, you change their whole life. If you feed them and clothe them, it helps, yes. And it gets them to think you're a good person too. And at least I'll listen to you. And hopefully they'll see if you can do that to them, they can do it to others. And I talked to a guy yesterday. He's very, he has issues, but he's very, when I'm talking to him, he was telling me all these sad stories about his life and how having sure his job was going to be, or where he's going to be living 5 years' time. And then he mentioned one of his flashing plate people where he lives getting told off in the morning, and he was roaring with joy. He was just so happy the other guy got beaten up verbally. I talked to another person there later on who's seriously mentally disabled, but a very nice person. And I mentioned this guy's name, and his face dropped. He couldn't stand him. Now, the first guy is mean to people, but when anyone's mean to him, he collapses, and he kind of said, what's the matter? Why are they mean to me? I'm a good guy. In his view, he's a good guy. Laughing at people's misfortune is such utter joy for him. He thoroughly enjoyed. I had a sister like this. She was always hurting people and picking at people and making their lives miserable. And any little thing went wrong in her life, she was bawling her eyes out. And she'd say, why does these things always happen to me? Why am I always so unhappy? Why did people treat me so bad? Then she'd go out and hit someone, deliberately. This particular girl went into a pub. Mum told her to, and she walked up to a guy who, I don't know, he just said something nice to her. And Mum said, you go up and do this in a pub and no one will stop you because you're a female. And so she said, oh, okay. She was about 18, I think, or 16. No, she would have been 18 to get into the pub. Mum was getting her in earlier anyway, but I think she was 18. And she went into the pub. She walked, this guy said something really nice to her. And she turned around and slapped him on the face in front of the whole pub full of people, probably 30 people. And she slapped him really hard so everyone heard it. And he just stared. He was totally, what the heck? And the thing I'm getting at, and he didn't do anything, of course, he wasn't able to. And she walked up and laughed in his face. And Mum said, see, you can do that with guys. We live in such a mentally, morally, indecently imbalanced world, corrupt world. And it's like the root of all is, money, root of all evil is money, or the desire for it. Our weaknesses today are so bad they've taken control of everything. And everything we buy, everything we look at, everything we want to get, it's like, and we've been bombarded because it's a commercial society. The rule is sell everything. Sex, emotion, whatever pleasures you want, drugs, alcohol, blah, 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 blah. Just sell it. And so people can make money, the government can get taxed and keep the ball rolling. And in the end, it's just corruption because you have to keep, one of the places, a mental health care place where there's a lot of people who are severe, different levels of handicapped or what they call it, I can't remember what they call it, the new version. They have physical or mental issues, and they can't work in a normal working environment, probably. And they're all about to lose their job soon because the government has decided they're not profiting enough from it, and the government's going to, this is the Labor government, and they're going to discontinue their work with them. And so there's just going to be put on some kind of welfare or something, struggling. And these people are very upset. I remember when Helen Clark got into power here in New Zealand, there was a place, in order to raise money for, she was heavily into women working, being a feminist, and there was a place down in Christchurch, a big place for, it had disabilities, children with disabilities, crippled and the like. They couldn't work, they couldn't live. They had wheelchairs and crutches and all that. She took $25 million, which was given every year to that place, away. She said, we're not going to support you anymore. And she gave it to the childcare services. So a woman could work in the thing. Politicians are cold, either side, all of them, and therefore it doesn't work. But try to tell the public it doesn't work. This is the point I'm getting at. You have a square of fake inside it. You have freedom and the fact that everything on the earth is yours for free. That is natural, like plums, apples, what's in the garden. It was all, the day you were born, it was all given to you free. The whole entire planet, each and every one of us. Humans made it commercial, created commercialism, created money, created greed, created industry. And in doing that, they ended up selling everything. Even your mental health is fixing. Prior to this, 200 years ago, we didn't need any of it. There was no industrial revolution. Yes, technology has changed our lives very much for the better, and it's amazing. But along with it has come a lot of horror. The mental health industry never existed at all 200 years ago. There was none, and from 200 years ago all the way back, it didn't exist. We didn't need it, and we don't need it today. The only reason we think we need it is TV, movies, books, education all tells us we need it. So it's drummed into our heads all the time that we need this mental, I'll just check your work phone, that we need all this mental health stuff, and we don't. But we think we do. And so why I think the world needs changing is if you're one of the woken people and you're out of the square and you talk to anybody, like if I try to tell Janet on the internet that I think because she eats meat and raves on about her love for animals. If you eat meat and you say you love animals, you don't. It's a fact. That's it, period. You can't eat what you love. You can't kill it and pay. Every time you pay for a piece of steak, you're paying for an animal's throat to get slit, to be blade dry so you can eat it. So you can't love animals. You're saying you love cats and you love dogs, but you're not talking about animals. Trying to explain to her that the kittens that she wants dissect, they deserve sex just like she does. So how about she get dissected first? And you'll hear, oh my gosh, how cruel. All the male chauvinists done enough for saying such a thing. That a woman not have sexual pleasure. But she is 100% fine for an animal to it. Then you get to the cows and how we treat them. Then you get to the other animals and how we treat them. And it all comes down to, well, then there's education, and some education is extremely good, like if to teach you how to measure and to make things and to build and gives you ideas so you can build for the future. And if you ended up in the bush in a bunch of land, I'd like to go to the bush, have a wife and kids, go to the bush, have a big bunch of land with trees and all that. Go there with all the tools and stuff I had, no electricity or anything. They put up solar panels and stuff, but live off the grid and learn how to live off the grid by drinking from the streams, drinking from the rain, collecting them. First making the shelter to survive, then making a house and all that. And there's been a lot to experience. But you see, the man and the woman are so busy that there's no time to, and they're working for each other, the kids. So there's no time to think about individualism, selfishness, and well, there's no and that. There's no jewelry shops for her to stare in the window in love with some so-called precious stones, and him to turn around and look at some fast car and say, "Oh, I want that or that cool suit or whatever." So take away the distractions, and you find love. Take away the distractions and worldly opinions, and you find compassion. And so we should have compassion for the kittens and the dogs and the puppies. We should have compassion for all living creatures. We should have compassion for all people. Now, it's hard for me. I struggle in certain areas having compassion for people who are pissing me off right now. And I still do. I have to admit, I still do want to go up to certain couple of people and smack them in the face. Let's go the weasel. I nearly did the other recently. I tried to force a fight with him, and he backed down. So I was very, very disappointed. We have you're not human unless you have conflict. You have disagreement, what people do, how they live. So you can argue, you can debate. With Janet, I just ignore it in the end. I had a huge fight with a large amount of people on the anti-LGBT scene, and I don't think a person agreed with me. It was me against probably, I don't know how many people. It became a big thing where people are just saying that I was cruel, I was mean, I was inhumane, I was a disgusting person, I was so wrong, I was I had mental issues, and I said, why can't the animals have sexual pleasure like you do? And that's what it came down to, and none of them got it. I don't think a soul felt guilty about taking away sexual pleasure from an animal. And that night they probably had sex and loved it. They cannot see the hypocrisy that's within them. And I have hypocrisy. I'm bound to. There's bound to be things I do that I haven't yet realized. But the problem, the reason why we need reformation is it's not just individual issues. You might say, I'm a hypocrite about a particular thing, another particular thing, and another particular thing, right? So that's three things. I can say the average human today is a hypocrite about just about everything they believe in. Their absolute faith in politics, or the left, or the right, or the political leader, or their love and adoration of the rock stars or the movie stars, and instead of just liking what they do, the music, and that's it. It comes to people today pray their churches services to pray to Elvis. He was just a druggy rock star. When he died, his body was full of illegal substances that he was taking to get high on, and they adore him. When you live in a world that people, it's like that girl, I'll call her the jaded one. She often gave me very smug, snarky looks because her and the rest of her family practiced incest and stuff and other things, illegal activities. I had one daughter who found God and became good. And fear of her going to the place, they brainwashed her, they drug her all the time, they do all sorts of evil things to her. That sister, the other one, the jaded one, always gave me this smug look like, we got the better of you. She's siding with the people that are hurting her sister, and she's supporting it and backing it up. She thinks it's fine. Now, the problem here is her mentality. Why does she think it's fine? Why does she think it's right to do this to her sister? Why does she think it's fine to do what she did to children? You see what I'm getting at? There should be no grounds whatsoever that she should ever sit down and think that doing this is a good thing, especially to her sister. Destroying her sister's complete and entire life. And she thinks it's fine. And the smug look she would give me, I turned around and posted on my website that I thought all I saw in her was, I saw Yes, there's a diamond inside her. There's a really good soul inside her. Her parents created the belief she has today, or had them, and they created the immoral, indecent, prideful, arrogant person that she became. Inside, there's a diamond of the original person that was her as a child. So she can't get into the kingdom of heaven unless she gets rid of all that and becomes that child, same as all of her group. And that would mean she'd have to back up and protect her sister as well. You ask a child, do you do these things? You ask a little girl and you say, is it all right for mum to kill the baby or have the baby in her tummy womb killed? And the child would be horrified, probably even cry. But ask that same child when she's 17 and sexually active, and she'll go, of course, it's a woman's right, it's her body. That's what society does to us. And that takes the logic away. Now, you try to explain to her that that's a baby, it's alive, it's living in there. These people today, these medical people doing the COVID thing for the Labour government or the Liberal governments around the world, they are pro death for babies inside their mother's tummy. It is excessively obvious that this is a living human being moving, thinking, enjoying its life within its mother's womb. There's just no way that anyone could logically think as they do, as they want the baby full term dead, or even 3 months dead. But they don't. And trying to explain it to them is near impossible. And that's why we need a reformation. We need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to good moral standards, decency, compassion, love for all, acceptance. And that is why God doesn't believe in punishment unless there's no other alternative. When there's no other alternative, people just won't get it. They refuse to get it. Then God has to sit back and they get punished. But it's their choice. And the thing here is we need a reformation because the whole entire world's gone sick. It's actually right now very mentally sick. Everyone's immature. They have tantrums. They have fits. And that's because we were brought up by the education society, not by our parents anymore. Our parents are too busy working, entertaining themselves, getting drunk and stoned, or whatever it is, or they've joined some career group, or they've joined some cause like feminism, or the guys some car club, and they're just 90% of their brain activity is on that, and the kids are just these people you kind of have fun with in the little amount of time that you get them. And because both the parents are having activities on the weekend, they still don't have a lot of time with their kids. So they can't teach their kids about love, about compassion, about man and wife, about husband and wife, especially if they're fighting themselves, getting drunk or getting stoned. So the kids learn from the parents, and if the kids are always at school or at a young age, they're not learning. And so we have a society based on everyone growing up with cold school learning. It's not the school's fault because they're only teaching them what they're told to teach, or they've been taught to teach. But the parents that spend time with their children, they create the missing link in the child's growth. So there's an empty hole in every single child where love, compassion, decency, morality, common sense, logic were all supposed to be in that. What is now void is empty. So when their brains, which are immature as adults, try to get that logic and stuff, it's not there. So they fall back on what they know. And all they know is school education and from their mates and stuff like that. And they desire pleasures. So they have no control over their pleasures. So they seek pleasure because it makes them feel better. It gives them a high. Well, life sucks. What we need to do is go back 200 years mentally, show them that the simple life on the farm and the cottage and the villages, the simple life was far more productive, healthy, physically, mentally. They did not need the doctor system we have today. They did not need the mental health system we have today. They did not need drugs. They did not need domestic violence centers. All these things didn't exist. And sure, history shows us all these bad periods in history because it's what's interesting. It's like watching TV. You don't watch the Christian show about the family being so happy and everything be fine because it's boring. And they're living it, enjoying it. But watching it's boring. Nothing ever goes wrong. So they have to put on a whole lot of disasters, death, rape, murder, and everything and sex into the Christian stories to get you and to enjoy them. So you'll watch the show and learn about God. It was all about a world back then before we were at that. And since we can't teach people simple common sense, look at those videos all on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is, or the ones where they interview people about simple things, simple logic things, and all the high school kids and that, they have no idea. They get the answers so wrong. It's incredible. And it's not that they're thick. It's because they've only been brought up on education. Their parents weren't there for them. Their parents fed them, their parents clothed them, their parents this and that and this and that, but they weren't mentally constructive in their lives that they gave them the proper life education that the children learned to become capable, strong-willed, have courage, have good moral standards, have decency, right. And we're having decades of this now. And for 3 or 4 decades, the parents have not been decent, they have not been moral, they have not been courageous, they don't have, so when they're not courageous, they're fearful, they have suffered depression, anxiety, taking out of the kids. The children see how their parents are cowards and they do these tricks in other people, they grow up learning it, they become that themselves. Society needs a cleansing, a huge cleansing. Now, you can be a part of it, or you don't have to be a part of it. The reason why people join gangs is because they're part of their upbringing, but it gives them a place to be. That one, Cleary, he lived with his sister. His sister's boyfriend beat him up. Other people had been beaten and abusing him all through his childhood. As a young teenager, he was beaten up by his sister's boyfriend, kicked out of the house, and he was picked up by the Ku Klux Klan. And they said, "Hey, mate, you want a place to stay tonight?" And he was like, "Yeah." And for the first time in his life, he'd been shown compassion, friendship. He'd been given food to eat. He was welcomed. So he became a very strong supporter of the Ku Klux Klan. And he fought against the blacks. And he was, these are my people. Someone finally appreciates and loves me. Then he met this black religious preacher who changed his life and completely changed him. And then he left the Ku Klux Klan and supported whites and blacks and everybody and became a reverend. So the thing here is this, oh no, I'm ranting and raving now, but this is why we need a new world. You can't talk to anyone now. You can't sit down and discuss normal, simple, logical things with them. They don't get it. So that's why we need a Reformation now to change the whole world. I'll leave it at that.